All right, let's get right into your emails. You can email us info@davidpakman.com. Every Friday, we take a look through the mailbag, so to speak. It's really more of an internet folder, but it still seems like we call it a mailbag. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense. And emails of all sorts are featured. You can email info@davidpakman.com with your thoughts about the show, politics, questions, whatever the case may be. So many meaty and substantive emails this week. Let's start one email from one of our viewers who is a neurologist making a very important point. Last week, you had a caller that mentioned nurses talking about how the COVID vaccine might cause individuals to misinterpret their symptoms. It seems this discussion of the nurses might be a misinterpretation of an actual report. There is a report that there are, quote, functional neurological disorders after the vaccine. I am a neurologist. Functional neurological disorder is the medical term for what used to be called psychogenic symptoms. In other words, folks are reporting symptoms that are not of medical origin after their vaccines. Below is a summary of the report from Medscape. Happy to interpret, but as a brief summary, there are a number of neurological examination tricks that neurologists use to identify psychogenic versus neurological weakness. One of these is the Hoover sign mentioned below. Yeah, so this is a really important thing. A lot of the time, people will not understand the difference between a symptom and an actual physiological side effect of a medication. And for example, you can have a headache after a vaccine or after a medication or after working out or whatever. It's not that the headache isn't real, but there may not be a physiological cause for that, but it doesn't make the symptom any less real. And there's a lot of different terms that are sometimes applied here in different disciplines. Sometimes people talk about psychosomatic. We don't even need to go into that. As our viewer here is saying, we're talking about when we say functional neurological disorder, if you don't know what that means, you're like, whoa, the vaccine causes a functional neurological disorder. As is being pointed out, that means there's a symptom which we don't believe to actually be caused by something going on neurologically. And this applies in many other areas of medicine as well. Very important point, and you can read more about it if that's interesting to you. Next email comes from Cody. Cody says, hello, David. I'm having trouble dealing with the fact that some members of my family have stated they will never get the vaccine, especially my brother, who's a local business owner and comes into contact with a good deal of our community. I've presented them with the information on the vaccine, how it's FDA approved, how 99% of deaths and 97% of hospitalizations are from the unvaccinated, and info on mRNA vaccines, and nothing is getting through to them. I often get the rebuttal that it's my body, my choice. But when I explain it isn't just them they are affecting, it's everyone around them. Friends, family, and our community, they shrug it off and suggest those people should stay at home then. Do you have any suggestions on a different approach to this? I appreciate your time and enjoy your content. Keep up the good work. Listen, I am not pretending to have solutions here. Sometimes knowing someone who gets very sick or dies is the only thing that will change the minds of some of these people. Even then, sometimes that won't change their minds. So I don't have advice, sadly, other than advice for you, which is at a certain point, you might decide for your own sanity. This is a personal decision that you've had enough and you're not going to try to convince them anymore, but maybe you decide you can't have them in your lives. That's not a suggestion. And I've not decided that with anybody, but you might reach a point where you say, this is too much. The stress of this is too much. And for safety and sanity, I'm opting out of this relationship. Or you might say, I'm just going to try to keep going because it's so important to me. Or you might try a different approach. I don't know. I wish I had an answer about what the right way to convince these people, what the most effective way would be to convince these folks. Next email today is from Michael. Michael says, hi, I watch the show from the UK most days, find them entertaining and informative. Nevertheless, I cringed. Oh, no. I cringed during an article when you repeatedly said a COVID number that had tripled had increased by 300%. Tripling means an increase of 200%. just as doubling would be a 100% increase. Careful with the maths and keep up the good work. I cringed when I realized I made this mathematical mistake. I make every effort to be accurate and precise with the audience. I appreciate the correction from Michael. And when I said the other day, COVID cases are up 300% and deaths are up 70%, 300% is a quadrupling, whereas the 70% increase in deaths is almost a doubling. Okay? Apologies, and always appreciate the corrections. Sky wrote in. Sky says, David, my in-laws are both major Trump supporters, as well as deep into conspiracies. My husband and his mother regularly have debates and recently had one that took an interesting turn. They were talking about vaccines, and in his desperation to get her to see reason, he suggested that all the misinformation was a liberal conspiracy to eliminate all the anti-vax conservatives in order to win elections. He also posed the question of how many liberals have died due to COVID, and asked her to name one. She could not. I found this strategy interesting and thought you might as well. Do we have to sink so low as to basically trick anti-vaxxers into getting the vaccine at this point? Would it be effective or damaging in the long term? I've talked about this before. I think that there would be, I don't know if we would call them scams. There would be things Joe Biden could say and do that would make the right go and get vaccinated. For example, imagine if Joe Biden announced, like, of course, he would never do it. It would never be legal. But imagine if Joe Biden announced, because of all of the things that these red state governors are doing, after October 1st, conservatives and Republicans will no longer be allowed to get the vaccine. It's like, it's so obviously impossible legally and logistic, like it just would never happen. But the point is, I am convinced that if Trumpists, conservatives, Republicans, whoever is in the anti-vax group, if they came to believe that they were not going to be allowed to get the vaccine because of their political views, millions of them would run out and get the vaccine. There's no question about it. If a theory, hypothesis, rumor started to spread that the left doesn't want conservatives to get vaccinated so that they die, I think there is no doubt that if it was believed, of course, if it was believed, that a ton of these right wingers would go out and try to get vaccinated. Now, is it damaging in the long term? Yeah. I mean, if Joe Biden did something like that, even if it worked, I do think in the long term, it would be damaging because it would further foment the idea that the government is lying to you and you can't trust the government to do anything, and on and on and on. So I'm not recommending it. I don't think it would be a good long-term play, but it would sure as hell work with some of these some of these right wingers. So interesting that the conversation went that way. Spencer wrote to me. Spencer said, I am seeing studies suggesting that teenage boys are far more likely to suffer from myocarditis related to the vaccine than to end up in the hospital from COVID. Have you heard anything backing this claim up? I'm only able to find a few articles talking about it. Yeah, I read a study this morning about it. It's not true. In fact, there was a study that was going to look at myocarditis in teenage boys, and it had like a sample of 9 million vaccinated teenage boys, and like none of them got it. Or at least none of them got it badly enough to have to be hospitalized or something like that. No, the evidence I've seen is that the vaccine is safer than COVID at every age group. Very important, because there are some who will say, if you are of a certain age, it actually makes less sense to get the vaccine. But from what I've seen is that at every age group, for just about every medical condition, you are better off with the vaccine and its possible side effects than you are getting COVID. Big picture, statistically speaking. Lastly today, this one's a doozy, guys. This is from JJ. This stuff is constantly coming into my email. It's just dumping in all the time. Here is someone who has somehow ended up believing really incorrect things about COVID and vaccination. JJ says, David, sir, no, they didn't say sir. How about the adults unable to get the real vaccines? Also, the Delta virus thing, a complete lie. COVID sexed when and how. No mutations right there. The proof needed. It's so sad that this is going on in our country. I don't know what else to say. You know, how about the adults unable to get the real vaccines? I think this is some allusion to fake vaccines. I don't know. The Delta virus thing is a complete lie. You know, we sequenced the virus. We know what percentage of cases are Delta. We saw Mu peaked in July and then has come down. At some point, if someone's going to say this is an apple and you're going to say it's not an apple, it's a fake apple and it's imaginary, at some point you can't convince them. COVID sexed? I don't know. Or do viruses have sex? I didn't think so. Maybe they do. I don't think it matters. Incoherent. And unfortunately, really, really unfortunately, a lot of people, I don't even know what that belief, I don't even know what they're saying, but I know a lot of people believe stuff like that because they email me all the time. We're going to have real trouble getting out of this pandemic if that type of stuff remains as prevalent as it is. We'll track whether vaccinations go up with the latest requirements and initiatives from Joe Biden. We will track all of it. We've got a great bonus show for you today. Please become a member. Really, folks, please become a member. Sign up at joinpakman.com. We do this show every day, but then we do an extra show called the bonus show every day, and you can get instant access to it if you become a member at joinpakman.com. One of our sponsors is SteadyMD Primary Care, the easier and more affordable way to do primary care, and they're giving you 50% off because you are in my audience. You just answer a few questions. SteadyMD will match you with a licensed primary care physician that's tailored to your needs. You'll have a 1-hour virtual appointment and start a meaningful relationship with your new doctor. And from then on, your doctor will be available to you by text, phone, and video chat. It's not some random doctor on call. Your SteadyMD doctor has a limited number of patients. You get the attention you deserve, and they can help you with anything your primary care doc normally would. It's very cool how it works. You don't need insurance. It's just $99 a month. No other fees or copays for visits. Take the free quiz and see which doctor is a perfect fit for you. You'll get 50% off your first month when you go to steadymd.com/Pakman. No risk, no long-term commitment. The link is right underneath the video.